It's our turn, episode number 97, Taking Flight. In this episode, Kathleen and I talk about the games we've played recently, including Wingspan, Nimmt, Gaia Project, and TAC, and I interview Elizabeth Hargrave about her new game, Wingspan.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic supporters on Patreon.com. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps us to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn. I'm Cathy Ford.
And this is the illustrious Kathleen Mercury.
Hi, Kathleen. How you doing? They have the Cathy and Kathleen show today.
I know. It's a good time.
All right.
Although you're wrong, because you're Catherine, and Kathleen is the only acceptable, but that's fine.
What?
Oh, it's a thing.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, everyone knows about, Queen Kathleen of Russia and...
Catherine of Russia.
Yeah. All right, we'll prove it today. Who is the best podcaster? Our velvet gloves are off.
All right. Well, let's start by talking about what we've been playing lately. So you, lucky duck, got to play a early copy of a brand new game. Tell us about it.
I did, and duck is appropriate in this situation because I have gotten to play Wingspan by the lovely and talented Elizabeth Hargrave.
Who you're going to hear from a little bit later in this episode today.
I know. So how perfect is that?
That is just absolutely perfect. We didn't prearrange that at all.
No. And in fact, because I knew she was going to be an upcoming guest, and when I had the opportunity to play the game, I definitely wanted to do so, just in advance of the interview. So it did work out really, really well. So I live in St. Louis, and I play games periodically with Jamie Stegmeyer, who's here in St. Louis, part of his gaming group, and also especially my good friend Katie Adams, who's with BoardGameTables.com, and also does some work with Jamie, and she had an advanced copy. And so she lent the copy to me for New Year's, so I took it down to my lake house, and we got to play it a bunch of times. So I played it 2 3/4 times, and the 3/4 was because I had to cook dinner. And luckily that was my first try, so I wasn't too... someone else was able to take over. It was still very much like the learning game, and then I was able to play it 2 more times. We played it with a number of player counts from 3 to 5 as well, and then other people played the game when I wasn't playing. So I think it probably got 5 plays over the course of the weekend. So
you're saying it's a good game?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's really pretty, and the components are lovely. I mean, everything from and I think that tactile sensory sort of experience is important when it comes to games. Some people might think the game is overproduced, but I think it's really nice, honestly. And it's nice to have games that have that. Like the rules have this, texture. They're almost like sort of plasticized with this texture on the rules. So they're really nice and substantial. Like they will hold up to a lot of flipping through if you need to do that, which you shouldn't really need to because the game, once you understand it, of course, like in most games, it's pretty straightforward. It's got a beautiful little bird feeder dice tower. It's got these cute little eggs that you can use when your birds lay various eggs. So component-wise, it's absolutely fantastic. From the wooden dice that you roll to determine what resources you have. So the game itself is really beautiful. Plus, game feel-wise, it has a very nice sort of game feel. I was thinking compared to, lanterns or something like that, where just the game is very pretty and you play cards. I'm not saying you can't be if you don't care about art, there is definitely still a game there for you. But the game itself just has that really pleasant game feel. Like when you just want to play a game, and just be immersed in the experience, like the art's not jarring or, all the symbols make sense for what you're doing. It's all very clean and clear. There are 3 different graphic designers who worked on various parts, but overall, like it's really seamless sort of look. And as far as gameplay itself goes, it plays out in 4 rounds. And what you do is you have the ability to you have a portfolio that you use to collect and display your birds. And so you're able to play bird cards down, you're able to lay eggs, you're able to draw more bird cards, and you're able to get food. And so as you play cards down, when you they go in the different types of terrain. But then later, when you activate the ability associated with the terrain, any of the abilities that are on the bird cards that you had played are then activated as well. And so that's that engine building part of it. So that if you have a lot of different birds with abilities in the lay egg section, when you lay eggs, not only do you get your eggs, you can also do all those different things associated with laying eggs, or associated with the birds that you put in that, the grassland section is the one for laying eggs. So you have a lot of interesting choices as far as each round has different goals that you can go after, the birds that you play. There's some birds, and the way thematically they worked birds and what birds do into this. Like, so for example, some of the birds that are more predatory have the ability, for example, that if you flip over a card, it'll say flip over a card, and if the wingspan of the bird is smaller or shorter than what this bird can handle, then you get to basically eat that bird. You can just take that card and tuck it underneath, and those are worth points. Then there's other ways that you can really maximize your efficiency in terms of how you get food and laying eggs, pretty much anything there. There are cards that let you do that. There's 140 different cards. Each one is a different bird native to North America. And with those bird cards, though, they're all different, but it's not like there's 150 abilities. There's a lot of abilities that are sort of duplicative. Like, so for example, your scavenger birds, like, condors or vultures or whatever, they'll have similar sorts of abilities. So it's not like you have to learn 140 different ones as you do it. It's definitely a game where, you're building engines with the best that you've got towards, the goals. You'll have secret goals. You have the ability to get more secret goals. So doing your best to fit what you can do. We did make a mistake in one game, in our first game, and it just had to do with refilling cards, and it ended up people were drawing a lot of cards blindly, and it just seemed really strange that the game would be played like that. And then we went and checked the rule, and we were correct because that was wrong. So once we played the game correctly the second time, we were like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense now in terms of why you would do that. So, and I definitely felt from my second full play to my third full play, I definitely felt more capable of seeing early on where I could perhaps try to build engines, especially having, gone through that learning curve of learning where the game is and learning where all the different types of abilities are and how I can best sort of process that. The thing that was probably the frustrating part for one play was for the 4 in-round goals. There's 2 different ways you can score those. And one is basically whoever has the most of something gets more points, and then it could go down to 0. And in the early rounds, that's not a big deal. But in the 4th round, whoever has the most, whatever the goal is, most birds and trees, whatever it is, they might get 9 points. And then the next person, I don't remember what it was, 6 points, 5 points, and the next person 3. And you only can have basically a maximum of 5. I think you can only have a maximum of 5. So if somebody has 4 and somebody has 3, that's a huge point difference between the two. And it almost felt like too much. It almost felt like if you're playing with that side of the round scoring card, then you really need to focus on those goals at the end, because that's such a big point swing. And if your private goals and if the engine you're building leads up to that, then you are well positioned towards winning the game. On the other side of that in-round scoring track, you basically just get credit for what you have. So if it's like the most birds and trees, if I have 4, I get 4 points. If Cathy has 5, she gets 5 points. And it's consistent like that for the 4 rounds. And I think I like that side better because when you only can have a maximum of 5, and it's such a big point difference between, first place and second place, I don't know that for me that totally made sense. But having basically credit for what you did do made it so that you were able to really focus on what you were doing and perhaps less on what other people are doing. But if you like a game where it's a lot more interactive and you're definitely wanting to focus a little bit more, it's not going to take over the whole game, but it's enough of a point thing to focus on. And so if you like that sort of like ability to edge out others and take points away and maximize your position over them, then you might like playing with that side better. I preferred the other side. We just get credit for what you did because the game isn't as interactive between players. I mean, there are times where somebody may have an ability. It's like, if you do this, everyone gets a grub or everyone gets to lay an egg. And there's definitely those sorts of moments. You have cards where if someone else does X, Y, Z, then you get Y. And those can be a little bit hard to track sometimes, too, just making sure you're paying attention to what everybody is doing so that you don't miss out on those tiny little things. But then again, the game itself plays well enough and smooth enough that if you're paying attention, then you'll be fine. If you're the type of person who likes to play a game on their phone, you will probably, while you're playing a game, which isn't necessarily great anyway, but we're realistic here about the world, you might miss out on some of those things.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that if you like playing Terraforming Mars, you'll like Wingspan. And I'm just like, okay, those are two totally different seeming genres, but they're both engine building games.
Right. And I would say I would definitely prefer, I like Terraforming Mars. I'm always happy to play it. I never, ever try to play to win because especially with the more expansions you throw in, the deck just gets bigger and bigger and more diluted for the type of engine that you might want to build based on your corporation. So I would say for an engine builder, Wingspan does it better because it's a narrow range of abilities. And and it's a lot easier to get and to see cards that kind of fit what you're trying to do. Whereas, you know, if you've got an engine that like really rewards steel production, and if you're drafting cards or if you just don't see any of those cards, then you can't really build that engine. It's a lot more possible in Wingspan.
Okay.
I've heard the comparison to Gizmos, but I've not played Gizmos, so I can't speak to that.
I haven't played Gizmos either.
Yeah.
And I've heard that as well. I've been seeing different reviews of it, and so far all the reviews are pretty good. What kind of a rating would you give this game?
Well, it was one that I was talking about it with my boyfriend Mark, and I said, you know, definitely it's a game I will always play. I really like what it's happening, and it's one of those games where, and it sounds weird to kind of focus on this, and I'm not trying to be overly conscious about it, but it is a really nicely playing game. And, you know, and so in some ways, in a weird way, it almost feels like, well, is this enough of a game because I'm not, you know, so like hardcore, kill, you know, instead of like, I've got all my birds. But I was talking with Mark and I said, yeah, I'm thinking about it, you know. So I would say probably like I was like at a 4 and he's like, oh, well, I pre-ordered it. So I'm like, okay, well then we're at a 5. Yeah, and like I said, it is definitely a game where I will be happy to play the game. And I don't know that it's a game where there's a lot of room for growth in terms of really knowing how you can work all these different pieces together, because at the end there's a lot of changeable things from the cards you see to the goals that you get, and what you get may not line up as well to that, or other people may not roll grubs a lot or whatever it is, you know. But it's definitely a game where when you know the game and know what's in it, your play can definitely improve.
Okay. Now, I watched a review of this that Tom Vassell did on the Dice Tower, and he said that, and you said this as well, that these are all North American birds. Do you think there will be expansions where European birds and African birds and Asian birds are put in?
I know that I think there is a World Birds expansion being planned. And maybe even like fictitious or mystical birds or mythical birds, because I suggested something and Jamie laughed and wrote it down. He could have been incredibly polite, as Jamie Stegmaier is wont to do and want to be. But because it was a bird about me. So anyway, but no, there's definitely, I think, more being planned.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I know that, when we just want to play a game and we don't want to have to explain rules to anybody or anything like that, our go-to game is Terraforming Mars. Do you think that Wingspan could become a game like that?
Yeah, because I think the first round is a game that it's definitely where the first round can be instructional enough where new players can get it and feel good about their position at the end of the game, even if they don't win. I think it's a game that you can teach well, even during the first round, so they know what they're doing and how they're doing it. So yes.
Nice.
Probably more so than Terraforming Mars, because Terraforming Mars can be really intimidating looking with all the different things on the board, plus all the different cards in hand, and you're looking at your hands together. Whereas Wingspan, there's much less. And I think for new players, having less to overwhelm them is important.
Nice. Cool. Maybe this would be a good game to teach engine building.
Oh, I would think so.
Nice.
I would definitely think so.
All right. So that's Wingspan, and Kathleen gives it a 5.
Yes.
Nice. Well, I didn't play anything as illustrious as Wingspan recently.
I'm not a new hotness kind of person.
No.
This is an aberration. This is not like a thing with me.
You were in the right place at the right time. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. My first game that I'm going to talk about is actually an old game that came out in 1994, and I have never played it until just recently, and that is Nimmt.
That is a great game.
It is a fantastic game. I bought it because for last year's 52-game challenge, I needed a low-scoring game where low score wins.
Sure.
And my friend Dwayne, hi Dwayne, he pulled out a game called Poison, and we played that, and I was going to have that be my low-score game. And then I found out in looking for it on Board Game Geek that it had another game, and it was Friday the 13th. Which made no sense for the theme of the game. But because it had that game, I used it for a game with a day of the week in the title instead. And I used Nimmt for my low-scoring game. And I was surprised at how much I liked this game. It's a filler game. And basically, you have 104 cards in a deck. They all have numbers on them, and then cow heads, which I'm like, cow heads? What? Okay.
Well, and I think in the rules, too, with the German translation, they're called beef heads, which is like kind of a really great insult I should use with people more often. What's up, beef head?
Anyway, the number of cow heads on the cards depends on how the card is divisible by 11, if I remember, 10 or 11.
It's 11.
It's okay. And so for the cards that are divisible by 11, they have 5 cow heads on them. Now, this is a game where low score wins. So you want to try and collect as few cards as possible. And the cards that you get, you want them to have as few cow heads on them as possible. And so each player gets 10 cards dealt to them at the beginning of the game. And then you pull out 4 cards and lay them in a column in numerical order. And then you each pull out a card and you play it, and you're going to put it in the row next to the card that is closest to it in numerical value. Person that adds the 6th card to the row has to take the row of 5 cards, and their card starts the new row. And so you want to make sure that you're laying down cards that are building rows, but not necessarily going to be the 6th card in the row, because you don't want to collect cards. And if you lay down a card that is lower than all the other cards on the table, you get to pick which row you take. And so at that point, you're hoping that there's a row that only has 2 cards in it, with maybe like 2 cow heads.
Right.
Anyway, you play until everybody runs out of cards, and then you score. And then you deal another hand and play again, and you're playing until someone hits 66. and then the game is over. And person with the lowest score wins. It's a simple game. It's a fun game. It's kind of strategic.
A little bit more than you might kind of think for a game with that kind of range of cards on the table and the amount of cards in the deck. Yes.
Yeah, because you've got this hand of cards, ranging in numerical value from 1 to 104. And you're trying to play them you don't have to play them in numerical order. You're trying to play them in such a way that you're tripping up your opponent. We had an 88 on the board last night, and I played 97. Well, Mark had a 95, and you can't play 95 after you've played 97. So that made it hard for him to play his next largest card.
Right.
Anyway,
and I think one of the great things for me about the game is the size of the deck is really important, because it's kind of like the mind or the game. When you have 100 cards at play, there's a lot more variance, wiggle room, and space between cards than what you would see in a 52 card game.
Right.
So, I might play a 63 and your card might be a 79, and that type of spread is totally reasonable in a deck that size, whereas much less likely if we're only playing with 52 card decks. And the best part is when you realize that you, or even better, someone else is going to basically be that last card where they have to take a whole row and gather up all those beef heads. That's when the game, I think, kind of goes from a nice card game to giving you that kind of player experience moment where you're like, yes, because I love
exactly.
Can't stop. I like heroic losses as much as I like heroic wins. I love that sharp, oh my God kind of moment, and this game can give you that with a very simple, straightforward kind of gameplay once you learn it. And I think you're right, because when you realize oh, and everyone else sees it once they reveal cards oh no, you're going to get hit. And well, do you want 4 beef heads or do you want 8 beef heads? You're I'll take 4 beef heads. Shut up, and goes from there.
I had one hand where my score was 0. I didn't take any cards. Mark got them all.
That's awesome. And that's, I think, where the game really that's where the game special sauce is, because it gives you those sorts of very specific moments in the game that you remember. Do you remember when I had 0 and you had all of them? And when players have those kinds of experiences, that's when they want to play it again.
Exactly.
So they can feel that. So yeah, no, it's a great, great game. They actually came out with it's been published many times over the years. And there's a really cool version that I would actually really like to have, because it was called Hurricane 5. And so it's all hurricane symbols, weather symbols. And I like that one better. It was a little bit, more interesting in terms of graphic design than what's out there now. But that's just a personal artistic preference thing if you don't care about art. And honestly, you might just like the simplicity of the beef heads better, because, beef heads.
Right. I absolutely give this game a 5. I bought it because of its scoring mechanism. I didn't know anything else about it other than low score wins. The art is kind of silly, and but it's entertaining. And I absolutely give this game a 5. Yes. I love it. It's going to stay in my collection for a long time. I can't wait to teach other people it.
Yes.
And
also, you can play it for free on Board Game Arena if you're familiar with that online gaming platform. They have it there. They may have it on other ones as well. And so what I like there is, it's not an expensive game because it's $10-15 probably, but
right.
You can play it on there and test it out with other people or with friends and see if you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a good option too.
Yep.
And it's nice too because of the online version, then you're not actually having to physically move and maneuver the cards, so you can play it a little bit faster too.
Right. So that is 6 Nimmt. I love it. I had to buy it from Germany because I couldn't find it here in the U.S. Locally. So I have the German rules. I had to look up the English rules on BoardGameGeek.com. But once you know the rules and you just want to remind yourself, how many cards last night, Mark and I were how many cards do we deal out? And we looked at the German rules and we could figure it out.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So
I always thought if I really want to be a serious gamer and designer, I just need to learn German. I think that's gonna set me apart, really.
All right. So what is next on your list?
Well, see, the nice thing is that because sometimes, you get busy, and especially when you work with games and you teach games, sometimes going home and playing games is not necessarily the thing you want to do or have time for. So sometimes I actually kind of struggle a little bit, like, oh no, like what game did I play this week? But with going to the lake this weekend, or for the New Year's with a bunch of friends for 5 days, I got a ton of games in. And it was nice too because, time to get longer games in. And so I was able to play Gaia Project, which is one that I'd been wanting to play. I'd played Terra Mystica, which was its sort of earlier iteration, or this is a more streamlined, updated, kind of expanded version of Terra Mystica by the same people. And I called Terra Mystica Terrible Mystica. I didn't totally love it.
I've played it once at a convention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like building games where you're building, little empires and spreading your pieces out. And the one thing that just kind of drove me crazy with Terra Mystica that I never, ever saw as thematically integrated in the game, which for me is a thing, but the whole, the purple power discs, and you move them from bowl to bowl, and then you can, spend them to use them, and when you get the power discs and all that other stuff. And I was like, and for me, it was just sort of cumbersome in terms of incorporating into my understanding of how best to maximize my game. And so I guess with Gaia Project, that was slightly better for me. With this version, I honestly, no, I really think the whole power thing, I get it from a game mechanical standpoint, and I understand that there's kind of a good explanation for it, but honestly, to me, it's just a fiddly part of the game to kind of control your intermittent access to different kinds of abilities, which is cool if you love that. For me, I won't say it's my favorite thing. And then it has this other expanded kind of these ability ladders that you can basically improve various abilities that you have in the game by, doing different things, spending different types of technology. And so for a lot of people, this is especially the part for Gaia Project that the game is and considered to be an improvement over Terra Mystica. The other reason is that the board is modular, which I agree, because in Terra Mystica you could kind of learn where the most optimal places to build were for your various faction. And so that kind of took some of the interest out in terms of, because you would know if you didn't get to build here, here, or here, you would just know early on that would negatively impact your overall performance. Whereas with a modular board, it's a much more flexible, fluid kind of approach to playing the game with the outcome in mind. So with these additional abilities, basically they're just ways that you can score more points, but also become more efficient. So instead of, as you move up a track, instead of needing 3 of these, Googads in order to do this, as you move up the track, well, then you would only need 2 of those Googads, and you get points for going higher up on the track. And then there's different other types of abilities that could either be a one-time, or they could be an ongoing ability or benefit that you would get by moving up these various tracks. So not only is it trying to maximize what you can do in your player board in terms of, managing your economy as far as, how much money you're going to get, how much technology you're going to get, how much ore you're going to get of these main resources. But also, you've got honestly, for me, the fidgety power disk thing, I still don't get it. I mean, really, I don't like in a game where I'm having to ask multiple times, okay, explain this to me one more time. When do I do this? What do I do this? Because especially since the game is language independent, it's got a lot of different symbols, and that, this would not be a game for a new player unless they're a super great new gamer that can get complexity really well, easily, and certainly there are many out there who fit that. But trying to learn what all these symbols mean, and some I don't think are entirely intuitive. So I played it twice to make sure I could give it a fair shot. I would play it again if I was playing with people that I liked, and I don't know that it's a game that is so suited to me because I don't think I would care if I won or not. I don't know that I'd be playing to win. I think I would be playing it to try to understand the game better in terms of what I could do and how best to improve myself. But as far as my overall performance in the game, trying to win the game, I don't know that, well, one, I don't think I understand the game well enough, honestly, to do that. But I also don't know that I care, honestly, enough in order to do that.
And that's important.
Yeah.
Caring about a game is an important part of playing the game.
Right. And I mean, there's plenty of other like big, complex, abstract Euros that I love and that I would play. But for me, it doesn't make sense. And it's certainly that could be a limitation based on me personally, Kathleen Mercury. And I'm totally fine with that because, everybody, there's many people who love it and would happily play it over and over and over again.
I have two related games that I absolutely do not enjoy playing because I just don't get it. And that is Roll for the Galaxy and Race for the Galaxy. My husband loves those games. Mm-hmm. I don't get it. So I completely understand where you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah, that's really funny too, because actually when I learned Race for the Galaxy, I was a brand new gamer. So like, well, have you played San Juan? Nope. Have you played this? Nope. Like every game. Have you played? Nope. So I was just like, my eyes are spinning in my head. I don't know what's happening. Luckily the game ended. I was like, oh, thank God. Never played it since. And then, I probably would now. I'm a better gamer, I just give it one more shot. And the other thing too, because Roll for the Galaxy, I'm like, well, I'll try that because with Roll, and it was, I was learning it it was like 2 a.m. and we'd been drinking while we were playing. It was not an ideal time to play. So again, it was kind of like, I'll just do stuff until it's done, and again, that's another game because the designer, he's great. And that's one I just need to give another shot to. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's hard when you don't feel as engaged with it because then you just feel like you're just moving stuff around. And that's kind of where I was with Gaia Project. Okay.
So what ranking would you give it? What rating?
Well, I think great potential is kindling is rough. All that plastic, and honestly, this is a far better game than anything I'll ever design. So I'll be fair and I'll give it a 3. There's definitely a game there. I would play it again with people. It's not like I would say no. And maybe the 3rd time or the 4th time, or maybe if I watched some tutorials and really understood like this whole it's not that I didn't get it. Like I was able to do it, but just like it just never seemed to click as far as why I would do things in an intuitive, logical way for me in the game. It became something you had to remember of itself, for itself. And to me, that's frustrating.
Okay. So a 3.
A 3.
All right. The last game that I'm going to talk about is TAC. Have you heard of TAC?
I have heard of this. I have not yet played this.
So this was designed by, I shouldn't say it was designed by, it was dreamed up by Patrick Rothfuss, who is an author of a book called The Wise Man's Fear. He's done other books, of course. Mm-hmm. But that in this game, he describes this game. I haven't actually read this book myself, but I've heard that this is where it's based on. Mm-hmm. And James Ernest, who is a well-known game designer, he does a lot of tongue-in-cheek games. One of my favorite games that he did was Unexploded Cow. Mm-hmm. And he is I think he owns and runs Cheap Ass Games. And so he does a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff, but this game is not tongue-in-cheek. This is an abstract strategy game, similar in look and design to chess. Mm-hmm. In this game, you have a 5x5 grid, similar to a chessboard or a checkerboard, only it's 5 squares by 5 squares. And your pieces are these little flat square pieces instead of like discs and checkers. They're flat square pieces. And then there's another piece that's a little more decorative that's called a capstone. Mm-hmm. You each have 21, it's a 2-player game. You each have 21 flat square pieces and then 1 capstone. Mm-hmm. And the goal of the game is to be the first one to build a road across the board. And you do that using these flat stones. Now, you can either put these flat stones down flat and they're part of your road, or you can stand them up and then they're called standing stones and they block a road. Mm-hmm. The other thing you can do is you can take your capstone, which has a rounded top on it, and you can you can knock down any standing stones that are in the way. And capstones are considered part of your road, but you can't put anything on top of them. Mm-hmm. So when you're building your road, you can put your pieces on top of your opponent's pieces. And then you gain control of that particular stack. So, you put a piece down on one square, and then you put a piece down on another square, and then your opponent can put a piece on top of yours, and now that road is blocked. And essentially, they've taken control. So if you put another piece down, you take control of your road and you can continue building your road. You can also move stacks. So you can pick up 2 or 3 pieces and you can move them to the square next to them, and you can drop off one and then move the stack again and drop off another one. And they become part of your road. And it's kind of an interesting way to do it because you can save that until like your last move, and you can move the stack along, and all of a sudden your road's done, and you've taken this stack of stones out of the way of that your opponent was using to block you. You've taken it out of the way, and you've completed your road. I was teaching this game to Mark last night, and Mark is really good at these abstract strategy games. For some reason, this game last night, and I think maybe it was just because it was Friday night after a week of training that we both went through at work. And his brain was a little more mushy than mine, I guess, because I beat him 3 games out of 3. But at the end, he was like, "Oh, I get it." And so he's like, "I want to play this again, but not tonight. Let's play it again when my brain is a little more solid." So, I mean, it's a simple game to teach, but it's surprisingly deep strategy wise.
On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of like 10 is a brain burner, where would you put it?
I would probably put this at about a 7 or an 8.
Solid.
Yeah, it's a solid game. It plays in, gosh, we played a game in like 10 minutes. It plays really quick. I have what's called the University Edition. It's a 5x5 grid and small wooden pieces. It's a pretty game. It's called Tack, a beautiful game. It is elegant as far as, the pieces are well made. It has a similar look to like a simple chess set. But it's just flat square pieces and these little capstones. And like I said, it plays really quick, but it's surprisingly deep strategy wise. When you have one move left, before you are saying, thinking you're going to win, you say tack. Like you would in chess, you'd say checkmate. And last night we were playing and I was literally looking at my next move and I said tack. And Mark goes, "You're not going to win next move." And I said, "Yes, I am." And he's like, "No, you can't go here and here and here." And I said, "Not planning to go there." And he's like, "Well, I don't see how you think you're going to win." I said, "Okay." And he made his move and I made my move, which was picking up a stack and distributing it along the road until, I had all my white tiles laid out in a well, it wasn't a straight line, it was a jagged line. But it was a legal road. And he was like, "Oh, that was staring me in the face and I didn't even see it." Yeah. I was like, yeah, I mean, it was simple and I don't know how else to, it's simple and strategic and it's an elegant game.
Well, and it sounds interesting, especially for my students, because I don't actually keep copies of, I have a copy of chess kind of hidden, because when I have game days, I want them to play, more of my, other sort of Euro designer games, not necessarily abstracts. But it sounds like for that one, it would be worth having because it would be an abstract game that would surprise them.
Yes.
And that's why, like, Hey, That's My Fish is really good with my hardcore chess players because they realize there's a lot more to it than just, simple scuttling around for fish. And but it's still very light and, and fast. It sounds like TAC would be a good step up from there. That could be a good alternative to chess.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I played it a couple times with Dwayne, and I played it a few times with Mark. I think it's definitely going to be on my 10 by 10 challenge this year.
Okay.
We played 3 games in less than a half an hour last night. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely looking forward to pulling it out and playing it again. It's not often that I can beat Mark in strategic abstract games.
So are you thinking about getting the full version that's the 6x6, not the 5x5?
I don't know. I don't know that that's necessary. I like this little version. I don't know. It's kind of like a question of, do you get the basic chess set or do you get the beautiful bigger pieces, bigger board chess set?
Well, but this one is a different size, 5x5 versus 6x6.
That's true.
Abstract. That's, I guess, as far as like, would the,
that adds more moves and things.
Yeah. Would the 6 give you different options for gameplay that go beyond significantly what you can do in the 5x5?
I don't know yet. I would definitely like to explore this game further. And if it becomes a real favorite around here, we might.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So that is TAC. And I give it a 4 initially. Like I said, I need to do some more exploring. Mm-hmm. But I definitely enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to playing it some more.
Cool. I will put that on my list.
All right. And that's what we've been playing. We have set up and been referring to and rating games by our own rating scale. Here's how we are using this scale. 5. Buy this now. 4. A good solid game. 3. Decent with some bugs. 2. Has great potential as kindling. And 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it. Today for the interview, I am joined by game designer Elizabeth Hargrave. Elizabeth has designed a new game called Wingspan that is coming out from Stonemaier Games. Elizabeth, welcome to Our Turn.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks.
I am so pleased to have you on. Can you briefly tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a game designer. I live outside of Washington, D.C. I moved here to work for the federal government. So when I'm not doing game stuff, I'm a contractor now doing health policy research and a big old nature geek.
Oh, nice. That explains the game.
It does.
All right. So what led you to become interested in doing game design?
I think the thing that really got me going, and it was specifically for Wingspan, that was my first game, I was sitting around with with a group of friends who are also big nature geeks and gamers, and sort of having a conversation about why are there no games about things that we're interested in. And this was maybe 5 years ago. I think it has changed some since then. There have been a lot of really beautiful sort of nature-themed games coming out in the last few years. So maybe other people were having the same conversation around the same time. But and so just kind of realizing that the game I wanted didn't exist, and I was going to have to make it.
Now, your game Wingspan is about bird watchers and bird researchers and things like that. I have only ever seen one bird watching game, and I'm wondering if you've seen it. It's called Birds of a Feather.
I have seen it. I played a prototype right before it came out. Yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I got taught that by the designer at a convention, and got up when I was done and went and bought it.
Yeah.
But just because it's wonderful.
There's another one that came out this year called Piepmatz, which is, I think, the German word for songbirds.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a sweet little card game where birds are coming to the feeder, and you're sort of playing differently numbered cards, trying to get a nice collection of songbirds from the feeder without having the squirrels and the crows stealing your seeds and scaring off your birds.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me a little bit about Wingspan. Is there a story you're telling with this game, or what were you trying to achieve with this game?
What was I trying to achieve? I wanted to make a beautiful game about birds that really got into some of the sort of economics and unique features of different birds. So to get birds into your tableau, it's a card building game where you're building a tableau that is creating an engine that's making your turns more and more powerful over the course of the game. And to get a bird into your tableau, you have to have the right food for it and have a space in the right habitat for it. And all of those characteristics are the actual characteristics of the birds that are in the game. So it's 170 unique cards, and each one of those birds needs food that bird actually eats in the wild, with some fudging around the edges to simplify it for gameplay. But
yeah, you can't keep an eagle in your aviary with nuts and twigs.
No, they want fish.
Yeah.
Or mice, yes.
Yeah.
Most of the birds in the game have power on them that either activates when you do an action that's associated with its habitat, or some of them play off of what other players are doing. So, for example, there's a brown-headed cowbird in the game, and they are birds that don't build their own nests. They parasitize other birds' nests. They actually will lay their eggs in another bird's nest. So for the brown-headed cowbird, the power is when someone else lays eggs, your cowbird also gets to lay an egg.
I love
things
it.
like that. Yeah.
That's great.
I tried where I could think of something that sort of goes with something that the bird actually does in the wild. I tried to make that the power that's on the bird.
Nice.
It's helping to build your engine. I
saw some of the art for your game, and you have some amazing art. And
yes.
I know you're getting published by Stonemaier Games, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yes.
They have always done amazing art games. So tell me about the artists that are involved in your project.
Sure, it's actually 3 different people. So Beth Sobel did the player mat and the dice tower art. It's a cardboard dice tower, but she made it look like a wooden birdhouse.
How amazing is that your game includes a
beautiful
wooden-looking dice tower?
Yeah.
It looks like wood.
Yeah, it's great.
That's amazing.
And then for the cards themselves, all the 170 birds were done by 2 different artists, Natalia Rojas and Anna. I'm blanking on her last name, sorry, but they're just amazing illustrations, and it was really fun to see those coming through as they were working on them and sort of see the game come alive. Because I had a little bit of placeholder art on my prototype just to sort of give people a feel, but a lot of the cards were just like the name of the bird. And when you see it with all the artwork on there, it just is transformed.
Yeah, and I mean, the artwork that I saw in the video that Stonemaier put out is just beautiful and amazing. So tell me, what came first, the theme or the mechanics?
The theme, which has been true I've done several other games more recently and that are still sort of in the works, and that's always been true for me with every one of them. I just get fascinated by something, and a lot of my games are sort of based on things in the natural world, and a lot of times it's just this idea that hits me of like, oh, this thing that actually happens in the real world is translatable into something in the game design. And with Wingspan, it was really thinking about, like, we play all these games that are trying to mimic human economic systems, but in nature, there's really a whole set of economic systems as well, of supply and demand, and different resources being available in different amounts and things like that.
Wow. How did you come up with the initial idea for the theme then?
My husband and I were just starting to really get into birding around then. So it was sort of bringing one of my hobbies into a game design.
That's right. It is a hobby of yours.
It is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. How did you approach playtesting?
That's a good question. I started off, I probably worked on it for a good year, just playing against myself, playing with my husband, playing with friends. And then I believe it was early 2016, I made it to Unpub, which is a playtesting convention. Now it's outside of Baltimore. At the time it was in downtown Baltimore, which is just a fantastic convention for, they get tons of just random general public gamers coming through, but also, most people who have, tables at Unpub only have half of the weekend booked at their table. So the other half, they're often going around playing. So you get a good opportunity to play with other designers as well, which is a whole different level of feedback from playing with the general public.
Sure.
And then coming out of Unpub here in the DC area, someone started a regular playtesting group that meets at a local board game cafe. I'm actually headed there this afternoon.
Nice.
And that has been just invaluable to have something set every month. To meet up with people, and that's again a mix of playing with other designers and just random people that are in the board game cafe or who know about the group and want to come playtest games. And then a little while after that, I also started meeting up with one other designer who lives about a mile from my house, and we meet about once a week. And that's just a whole nother level and has been super, super helpful, I think, to both of us in really moving things forward more quickly, because you cannot do it without the playtests.
Yes, absolutely. Did you face any balancing challenges? And how did you resolve them?
That's a good question. So I have a huge spreadsheet, as you can imagine, with 170 rows in it for all the different birds. And so I got really good advice at some point. There's an article that the League of Game Makers put out about sort of how to balance and price things in a game. And their recommendation, I forget which member of the League of Game Makers wrote this, was to pick one thing in your game and fix the value of that one thing. So if I did, a card in my game is worth a point. And then if you have one fixed thing and you can make everything else relative to that, okay, it's easier or more difficult to get this thing. And so it's worth more or less than that 1 point for the card. You can kind of math out a lot of things. So when I was trying to figure out how much is this power of this bird worth, okay, it's gonna on average give this bird an extra 3 or 4 food over the course of the game, so that's worth so many points. And so it's all just kind of a bunch of formulas in a spreadsheet.
Okay.
And once I was able to work out that math when I was playing with people, every once in a while I'll get something of like, are you sure you mathed this out right? But usually it feels pretty balanced to people, which is super helpful with that many things going on to have some confidence that it's that I didn't just sort of intuit, or that I didn't have to hand guess about 170 things. Like I have some metrics that I can just say, okay, this is obviously this because it's A plus B.
Okay. How did you tackle accessibility challenges in your game?
I tried to stay aware of that in my prototype for sure in terms of color blindness. And at one of my first ideas for the game was to have there be some set collection relative to the colors of the birds, and it fell apart when I realized how hard that would be for some people and sort of let that go, which is fine. There's plenty of other stuff going on in the game right now. And actually, there's a bunch of bonus cards that you can get that are sort of set collection little things you can be doing on the side of building your engine. And one of them is color-based, but it's just, does the bird have the name of a color in its name?
Oh, okay.
So like a red-tailed hawk has red in its name, so that counts towards that color bonus,
I see.
which is the photographer card. Instead of trying to have, points for all the red cards, which are hard for some people to see because red is hard to see. What other accessibility? I mean, the cards do have a lot of text on them, which they're pushing my limit actually for how much text, but I had so much fun with coming up with the powers on them, and we decided not to try to make up icons for them. Like, one of my favorite games is Race for the Galaxy, right? Where they have condensed everything down into one little icon for every possible power, but it means that you're like learning a whole new language of icons for the game. And we decided to just write everything out.
Oh, okay.
Instead, which I think is going to feel more accessible to some people and less to others, depending on their preferences there. But
now, let me ask you, have you gotten to hold a copy of your game yet?
I have. I got a pre-production copy.
Nice. How'd that feel?
Amazing.
You said this is your first published game.
It is, yeah.
Oh, that must have been really amazing.
Yeah. And it was making me crazy because it was under embargo. So I had it for a good, at least a month before I could show it to anyone online. I mean, my local playtesting folks have seen many, many copies, and I showed them for sure. But to be able to start talking about it has been really fun.
Nice.
It's been under wraps for a while.
So for a while, all you could do was pick it up and squeeze yourself, huh? Wow. How did you come to the attention of Stonemaier Games?
So I talked about going to Unpub in 2016 and then really sort of ramping up my playtesting that year as I met people coming out of there. And so Gen Con 2016, I went and pitched to 3 different publishers, including Stonemaier. So Jamie that year had just created a series of events. You could literally just sign up for a half-hour slot with him in the Gen Con event system.
Nice.
I didn't have to pitch it to him that he should meet with me. I just grabbed one of his slots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which I thought was a cool system because especially with this game coming into it, and he might have said yes anyway because, I think he saw what I was trying to do and really enjoys the theme as well. But I did definitely have some resistance from people over the theme as I was starting out. And I just knew I had to find the right publisher who saw where I was trying to go with it, and who saw the potential for this theme. Birdwatching is actually a huge hobby worldwide, and on the Wingspan Facebook page, it's been amazing to see how many people have come out and been like, oh my God, birding and gaming are like my 2 things. You made my game, that's been really fun. So I just had to find someone who could see that. And so I looked through the list of publishers that were going to Gen Con very carefully, sort of looking at the vendor hall list and things like that, and tried to figure out which publishers had the best chance of being interested, and screened out a lot of folks who only do, high fantasy or science fiction. Tried to look for folks who already had some other games with unusual themes. So like with Jamie with viticulture was one thing that sort of gave me this inkling that he might be interested in something with a unique theme.
Yeah. And he made a game based on somebody's art. That's what Scythe is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Just getting away from your game just a little bit. Besides your own game, what's your favorite game to play?
Oh, I always have so much trouble answering this question. I still do play a lot of Race for the Galaxy. It's such a great little quick engine builder. It's so satisfying, and it's great at 2 players, so my husband and I play it a lot.
Roll for the Galaxy is one of my husband's favorite games.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think because I started with Race for the Galaxy, switching over to dice just like freaked me out. I couldn't.
Hey, if your favorite game, is your favorite game and they make a dice version, that's going to be like second best, but.
Right. But more recently, I am really loving Between Two Castles and Mad King Ludwig, which is another Stonemaier game.
I just played that.
I play tested that a lot. So I was talking about the guy that I play test once a week is Matthew O'Malley, who's one of the designers of that. So
nice.
That was another game where I played it many, many times with blank tiles that just had little symbols and words on them, and then to see the final version with all of that art was just amazing.
I love the way that people are being allowed to make sequels of Stonemaier games. So like Between Two Cities was a Stonemaier game, and now there's a sequel called Between the Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, which smashes together 2 games.
Right. In that case, it's actually the same designers as Between Two Cities.
But still,
you're right. To like follow up with a sequel that's...
and Castles of Mad King Ludwig isn't one of the Stonemaier games, so they had to go get the permission to do that.
Right.
And then another company made a game called Leaders of Euphoria, which is a prequel to Euphoria. And Stonemaier just seemed to be like, okay, sure, go ahead. And, they're a whole different company making a game in that game's universe. I think that's wonderful that he's open to that.
Yeah.
What do you think needs to be done to encourage more women and girls to get into game design or the gaming hobby?
That is an excellent question, which I have thought about more than who I want to play games with. I think part of the problem is that designing games, especially your first game, but even, many designers have many published games, and it is still just a side gig and a hobby. And it's kind of a luxury hobby because, going to conventions is not cheap, and buying games that you need to play to know what you're doing is not cheap. And I think for a lot of women, depending on how their household is organized, there's the added stress of like if they're doing more of the childcare, they have that much less free time for other things. And designing a game takes a lot of time and a lot of playtesting time, and most playtests are going to be on the weekends and in the evenings when other people have time to do it, and that's when you're hanging with your kids and
right.
keeping your household going. So there's some fundamental things there that some people have overcome. I think another piece of it is that a lot of women just don't see it as a possibility. Like, I didn't really think about it until I was like, oh, there is a game that I want to exist that does not exist, and I'm going to have to make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, one of my hopes with Wingspan is that, like, all of the names on the box, except for Stonemaier, are women, like myself and the 3 artists that were involved in it. And I just hope that, like, having more games like that, and I know there are several other sort of big games coming out this year and next year that are by women, and I'm hoping that as that becomes sort of more normalized, then more women will just have it in the back of their minds as a thing that women do.
Yeah. And I think that, in my experience, I think one of the issues that women face is finding games that are appropriate to play with their kids.
Yeah.
A lot of moms go shopping at Walmart, Target, and the games that they have in stock are the ones that they've always had in stock. Granted, that's changing somewhat.
Which is changing.
Yeah, that is changing somewhat. I've seen Pandemic and Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert in Kmart or not Kmart, but Target and Walmart.
Yeah, Target. Some Targets are getting quite a selection.
Yeah,
now.
they are. They are.
Yeah.
And Barnes and Noble as well. I noticed different hobby games in there. But I think also, too, the whole learning the rules and figuring it out, although that's getting easier now, too, with all of the YouTube, how to play kind of stuff that you can find on YouTube. So I think we're getting there. I think, and as video games, and I'm not denigrating video games at all, but as they've become more prominent, I think playing games has come back into people's scope of thinking. And wanting to get their kids' attention back from the video games, I think, is something that has brought tabletop games to the fore. Would you agree with that?
Interesting. Yeah, probably. That's a really good point. Of like, here's something that it's still playing a game, but it's not screen time, and you're actually interacting with your family members or your friends.
Right,
yeah.
right.
I could see that. I would say one other thing that made it hard for me as a woman, and, I have never, well, except recently on Twitter, I had a couple really negative conversations, but in general, like, people have been super welcoming, never had a problem with people being like, oh, what are you doing here? But it's still walking into a playtesting session at a game cafe where everyone there is male. Even though no one literally says, what are you doing here as a woman? It feels like that walking into the room.
It does.
And and Unpub, I think I counted the names last year or the year before, and it was like 10% women. That room feels very much like you're walking into a room full of mostly men. And it's getting better. And it's a real chicken or egg thing, I think, of like, if you don't have some women in that room, then the next set of women will always feel that little, I don't know if I want to even call it a barrier, but it's an uncomfortable feeling that you just have to push through. And it's definitely changing in my local group. There's always been one other woman, and we seem to not quite ever make it there on the same weekend. But a couple months ago, there was a good couple hours when there were 3 games being tested, and they were all women designers, and no guys were running games at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Like, oh my God, this is such a change. It's great. And I think it's going to keep changing. I think that, who games is changing. There are more women just getting into the hobby in general, and most designers are people who've been playing games who get hooked and want to make something that they think they have an idea that hasn't been done before. And so as women just enter the hobby more, I think we'll see more women enter designing.
Nice.
But there's a time lag.
Yes, there is, definitely. I know I've heard people say that all gamers want to be game designers. And I'm here to tell you that ain't true. I have zero interest in taking on the puzzle project that is designing a game.
It really is a puzzle, and I love puzzles, but it's interesting that you put it that way, because a lot of it really is that, like, okay, this isn't quite working. What's the next thing I can do to make it a little better? And just iterating and trying to crack that nut of the puzzle of like, okay, for this game, what are all the right answers?
Although, I do face that in podcasting. So maybe I do like puzzle projects a little bit, but I have no ideas for designing games, and I love playing them, but it's just not all gamers want to be designers, but I love designers who do want to be designers, because it brings me more games to play. So what's the next project for you?
So AEG just last month had end of November was the due date, had a call for submissions from women designers, so I put a game into that pot.
Nice.
We'll see what comes out of that. I over last Gen Con, during Gen Can't, Button Shy ran a game contest that I was one of the 2 winners of. So at some point in 2019, I'll have a game coming out from Button Shy called Tussie Mussy.
Congratulations.
Which is a sweet little 18-card I Split You Choose game where you're giving flowers to other players. A Tussie Mussy is a little Victorian bouquet of flowers. And in Victorian England, there was a whole thing about flower language and what different flowers meant when you gave them to people. So it's sort of based around that concept.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I have a few other designs sort of percolating. I haven't picked up the next thing. I'm working on an expansion right now for Wingspan as well, sort of getting ready for putting out another deck of cards that well, we've said that we're gonna try and cover some other regions of the world. So all the birds in the base game are from North America.
Okay.
So I'm working on another continent right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, when can I get my hands on this game on Wingspan?
So orders on the Stonemaier website open up on January 2nd. I believe there's a special deal from January 2nd to January 8th, especially if you are a Stonemaier champion, which is a little sort of membership program that you can join, which gets you within the U.S. free shipping and internationally discounted shipping on all the games that you order directly from them. And then even after January 8th, it'll be available on their website for direct order. The retail release won't be until later, I believe March.
So, okay. I didn't know about the Stonemaier champion thing.
Yeah, so you pay a little membership fee, and that goes, the way JB describes it, it's sort of going towards all of the blog posts and videos that he does around game design and Kickstarter issues, sort of supporting that work that he does.
Nice.
But then as a perk for it, he gives folks discounts on shipping and sometimes discounts off the prices of the games themselves.
Oh, fantastic. How can people connect with you in the wilds of the internet?
I am most active on Twitter for board game stuff, and on Twitter I'm at Eliz Hargrave. So E-L-I-Z and then my last name, Hargrave.
All right. So we will have all of that information in our show notes, which you can find by going to ourturnpodcast.com/episode 97. Elizabeth Hargrave, thank you for coming on to Our Turn and telling us about Wingspan. It looks like a gorgeous game, and I can't wait to get my hands on a copy.
Thanks, Cathy. This has been a lot of fun.
Hey friends, you may have noticed that we're getting very close to our 100th episode. It's been quite the journey for us, and we are planning a special episode to celebrate. But we need your help and input. We want to hear from you. What does our show mean to you? When do you listen to it? What was your favorite topic? There are 3 ways to contribute. Number 1. Create an MP3 file using Audacity or some other recording program so that we can hear your answers. Or call 916-426-2873 and leave us a voicemail message. Or go to ourturnpodcast.com/anniversary and write us your answers. We need your input by January 19th, 2019. Please send your audio file to ourturnpodcast@gmail.com. We'll read your response or play your recording on episode number 100. We can't wait to hear what you have to say. All right, so now we're getting to the part of the show where we're winding things down and looking ahead and talking about what we've got on our plate coming up. Kathleen, what have you got going on?
Well, I have something super cool, very exciting. On Thursday of this week, I'm going to the Lake of the Ozarks, and I'll be there with J.R. Honeycutt and I think 12 other game designers, developers, and playtesters for an intense 3-day board gaming retreat weekend. that I'm very excited about. Plus, there's some other people coming a little bit early, a couple people leaving later. So I'm very excited that we're going to be able to get some really good gaming in. And then, so I'll be able to get play tests of my games done and play test lots of other games. So I'm super excited. And the other thing is I'm a teacher. My summers, I always use my Second Life. And so I have an interview on Saturday for a gifted program, a program for high school gifted kids. It's a 3-week intensive program at the University of Missouri. And I'll be doing game design, maybe RPGs, maybe escape room stuff. I'm not really sure, but probably game design because that's obviously my thing. And so I'm really excited because if I get that, then I'll have this amazing opportunity to work with high school kids in this fantastic setting for learning and growth this summer. So very good things coming up for me.
Nice. That sounds really exciting. I am starting a new position at work. Mark and I both work at the same place, and we both got promotions to the same job. And so we both went through training this last week, and Monday, when this episode drops, we'll be starting in our new position full speed ahead. So we're kind of excited about that. I've only been at this company for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And already earned a promotion, so that's exciting.
Exciting.
Huh?
That's super exciting.
That is really exciting.
Yeah. I also love that you're Cathy. I mean, I grew up being called Cathy, although I go by Kathleen now. And then you have a Mark and I have a Mark. So there's just...
It is. That's funny. And then next weekend, we're having some friends over to play games on Saturday. And I think it's just going to be a nice, relaxed game day around our game table, and I have no idea what we're going to play, but I love having this group over. This is the same group that I used to do Tuesdays with, Tuesday game group with, but mine and Mark's schedules both changed, and so I don't have Tuesdays off anymore, so I have Saturday and Sunday off now, and so we've just moved our game group to Saturday instead, so cool. That's fun. And otherwise, we're just kind of, recovering from the holidays and New Year and starting the new year fresh.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm also running my Lady Blackbird RPG with my all boys. So I have an all boys RPG group and an all women. I call it boys versus women. But let's be honest. So anyway, so I'm running my Lady Blackbird with them, and they have a lot of narrative agency. And with them, there's basically like 3 goals that I'll have in mind for the night. And however it happens, I don't know, but it's usually inappropriate. And I always laugh so hard. So I'm excited about that because it's just like, that's like riding a dragon that's 15 years old and is like into its dad's booze. That's what that dragon's like. So, but it's always fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you online?
Well, if you want to get a hold of me on Twitter, I'm at Mercury with 7 M's. So Mercury, BGG, I'm Funk Donut. But also I have my website, KathleenMercury.com, where I share all my game design teaching resources for free. And you can contact me through that website as well.
Nice. All right. And you can reach out to me on Twitter. I am at Our Turn Podcast. And if you want to connect with Sarah Reed, she runs our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/OurTurnPodcast. And then I also run the guild on BoardGameGeek.com, which is guild number 2600. And you can find all these links in our show notes, which you can find at OurTurnPodcast.com/episode 97. Thanks for joining me today, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. It is always so much fun to talk with you.
Oh, I'm always delighted to have you on. All right. Until next time, and on behalf of the entire Our Turn Podcast crew, that was our turn.
And now it's yours.
Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on January 5th, 2019, and is written and produced by Cathy Ford and Kathleen Mercury with assistance from Elizabeth Hargrave and Mark Ford. Next time, we will discuss our 2019 game challenges. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail, or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Incidental music was provided by Purple Planet Music. Please check out our show notes to learn more about these talented artists. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 97. You can find a list of the games along with links to their listing on BoardGameGeek.com. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like the Snakes Cast, the Party Game Cast, or Rolling Dice and Taking Names by going to dicetowernetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.